Welcome back to Senior Choices. I'm your host, Brent Veasey. And in our previous segment, we started talking about how religious beliefs can impact individuals and rights. Okay. And we talked about what has been happening with the homosexual community and the transgender community in our country, with some recent laws that have been enacted to address certain aspects of things regarding marriage, healthcare, those types of things. And look, it's not an easy subject to get into, but it's a subject that we need to be able to face, and we need to be able to have discussion on, and be able to have that discussion be respectful in tone when we are doing it with each other. So I'm not sitting here and saying they're right or wrong at all, those that believe these aspects because of their religion. But what I am saying is that our Constitution has been very clear about how these things should be addressed. And the Founding Fathers made it clear that freedom of speech, freedom of religion, okay, all these things were not conditional aspects for reality. Okay? We have them. Everyone has them. Okay? So if everyone has them, regardless of whatever a religious belief says, then how should we be able to go through the process of having religion and policy intermingle? Well, because the Founding Fathers were basically telling us that they didn't think that that needed to happen, because they foresaw this type of conflict occurring, because they experienced it in their own lives with the British Empire. And they saw it happen in England, in Britain. Okay? So they wanted to keep these things as separate as possible. And that was their objective with everything they did. Raison d'etre, the reason to be. The reason to be for the United States of America was as a place where people can have freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and worship God or their deity in whatever way they think they should be able to worship. That is the reality. And when that reality of the freedom of worship then comes into the space of policy and says, because of religion, then this, and this should happen. That gets a little bit murkier. And then because of religion, when we start saying this, and this should happen to this group of people, that gets even less good. Okay? Because now we are starting to say that people are less than. Okay? Because now we're starting to create tiers within our system of laws that says that if you're on this aspect, then you have this amount of freedom. If you're on this aspect, then you have this amount of freedom. And if you're this aspect, then you have this amount. Because of who you are and because a religion says that's the way it has to be. That is directly contradictory to what our founding fathers were trying to accomplish. We have to understand that. And we have to understand and know that this contradiction is there. And then we need to figure out how we address that contradiction as a country, but also as individuals. Okay? Because a lot of religions basically say you treat people as you want to be treated. In Christianity, I mean, it's called the Golden Rule. So are you treating people as you would want to be treated if you're taking away some of those freedoms that you enjoy from others? And is that something that is actually what the religion is trying to do? Because I don't think that's what a lot of religions are trying to do. I don't think religions are saying, okay, yeah, this group is less, this group is less, so we treat them less, and that's okay. Most religions that I'm aware of in this world are religions that promote love, caring, nurturing of others. Loving, nurturing, and caring, that isn't compatible with taking others' rights away from them. Is it? I mean, that's the question that we ultimately have to discuss and face. And that's what they're ultimately having to do in Washington now. Okay? And two of the most powerful men doing it are saying that they're doing so by keeping this separate. Our president and our new speaker. The president has been doing it for decades. Okay, he has a track record. The speaker, we'll have to see, because he's kind of the new kid on the block, literally. Hopefully he won't be bursting out in the song with New Kid on the Block songs, on Capitol Hill, but he is the new kid on the block. And we need to give him the benefit of the doubt as well for that reason. He says this is what he's going to be about, so let's let him do what he's going to do. Let's see that he's going to actually be a man of his word and do that's what he's known for. Okay, being honest and trustworthy and a good person. So let's see what happens. Because there's a lot that needs to happen in the next few weeks. A lot. Okay? So remember the government shutdown. Well, the bill they passed ends on November 17th. Okay? So today is Halloween. So that means we basically have 17 days to get the government funded. Okay? That's one of the big things he's going to have to do. Okay? Then we have all this stuff going on around the world. Israel, Ukraine, even Taiwan, down on the border. All of this is other things that we've talked about on the show, right? So after this station break, we're going to start breaking down these things and why they're so important and why we got to get this done sooner rather than later here on Senior Choices. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Senior Choices. I'm your host, Brent Veasey, and now we're talking about the things that have to be done by our government. Okay? The first and why it's going to be important for them to be able to keep personal feelings, personal things on the side as much as possible so that we're able to get these things done for the best interest of everyone. Okay? So Speaker Johnson says that they started working on those appropriations. Remember, each department of government, there's 12 of them, has a bill that has to pass the Congress, the Senate, and the House, and be signed by the president into law that funds that department on discretionary spending. Okay? Not mandatory, discretionary. So, remember, the Congress had passed one. That was the Pentagon. Okay? Now, they're talking about voting on 3 this week. Okay? In the House of Representatives. So that's 3, that'd be 4, and then they have to be discussed with the Senate. Because right now, it doesn't look like that the House is going to pass a bill that has already been looked at and passed by the Senate. And that gets to be a little bit of a challenging aspect, because in order for them to go through and agree on the same bill, they have to go through something called a conference committee, which is when a group of people from the Senate and a group of people from the House come together and meet and basically discuss and hash it out on what the final bill is going to look like. Okay? And the final bill has to be something that is going to pass both houses of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, before it gets to the president for their signature. That process can be a lengthy process. Okay? It can be a very lengthy process. Probably longer than 17 days. Probably. So the first thing that's going to happen is a realization by the speaker, which he says, okay, he says that, yes, I do see the need for another continuing resolution, CR. That's what they call it. And the continuing resolution basically says that we're going to continue the government spending as we've been doing since the end of September, okay, until we're able to get these other bills passed and signed into law. So the number that's been discussed is somewhere in the ballpark of taking a continuing resolution to some point in January to allow for the House to pass their versions of the appropriations bills and the Senate to finish their work on their versions of the appropriations bills, which the Senate is getting close to finishing their work on all of their bills. Okay. We'll see. That would be good if we were able to get that done on a continuing resolution basis, which is something that group of 12, 8, whatever group of Republicans that started all this said that they didn't want to do. They didn't want to do that continuing resolution thing. They wanted to vote on these individual things and hold accountable the people and yada, yada, yada. And that's where we are, is the yada, yada, yada part. Because now everybody understands that they got to get more time and they can't have the government shut down. So this is what we're going to have to do. So hopefully that knock on the door is the realization that we need to get this moving faster than not and get this done. So we don't have to worry about the continuing resolution and government shutting down, which is not something that markets want to see, is government shutting down. So that's one thing. Just minor thing, right? Just a minor little thing. Now, the other thing that's important is this Israel, Ukraine, border security, Taiwan aspect. Okay? So why are all these things important, Brent? Truly, why? Because it's all stuff that's happening not really here. It's over there. It's over there. It's way down on the border. I'm up here Why does all this stuff matter? Well, here on the show, we've talked about how things that happen in other parts of the world impact us here in the United States, right? So the war in Ukraine has lessened the supply of wheat, corn, and other food products. What has that done for our pricing of groceries here in the United States? Everybody says they're concerned about inflation and pricing, right? So if you're truly concerned about pricing and inflation, then you should care what happens in Ukraine, because that is directly increasing the prices for wheat, grain, sunflower seeds, and a lot of other basic staples that we need for our food supply. So it's time for that realization to kick in, folks, that what does happen over there matters to us here. We have to support Ukraine to defeat the Russians, because they need to be a nation that can give us food, because they're the second largest or first or the largest supplier of whatever wheat, corn, sunflower, basic staple of food that we need, the world and the United States. So that's why Ukraine is important. Israel is a democracy that's been attacked by terrorists. That's why it's important for us to support them. Israel, need to understand that there are innocents that are involved. And they got to do everything they can to protect those innocents. Absolutely. But that doesn't change the fact that we need to support them. And we need to support Taiwan, because they provide 90% of the semiconductor chips in the world. Did you know that? All those little computer chips, 90% of them come from Taiwan. That China is threatening to take them. Do you want China being the king of chips for computers? After this station break, we're going to finish this discussion and tie it all up here on Senior Choices. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Senior Choices. I'm your host, Brent Veasey, and we started in the last section, in the last break, before the break, of talking about why it's important to do these things overseas. And the long and short of it is, it's because we're all in this boat together, aren't we? We really are. And what happens over there does impact us right here. It impacts our economy with food supply. It impacts our security with what's going on with terrorists in the Middle East and what happened to Israel. It impacts our security and economy again with Taiwan and the fact that they produce the world's computer chips. And they're being threatened to be taken over by China. And do we want China to have control over the world's computer chips? That's the question. Not to mention what's going on down at our own southern border of the United States. Okay? Now, on the southern border, everybody's like, oh my God, we got all these. We're not even going to get into why they're here in the first place, which is the fact that they're coming from countries that are literally disintegrating in many instances, like Venezuela, where more people have left Venezuela than have left Ukraine. Ukraine is in a war, but Venezuela is so bad that more people have left Venezuela than have left Ukraine. That's a fact. And you have other countries that are south of us that are falling apart as well because of drought and not having food. And governments that are just terrifying people. So that's why they're showing up and risking their lives, because people die a lot. A decent amount of them die just trying to walk here thousands of miles to try to get in and into the country any way they can. They're that desperate. Okay? So we're not even going to discuss that part of it, even though I kind of did. We're not going to discuss that in detail. What we're going to discuss is the fact that we don't have enough judges to be able to review these cases for people that say they need asylum because they're going to potentially be killed or starve or whatever if they have to stay in the country that they were in. Okay? So we need more judges, immigration judges. Okay? We need more electronic equipment, surveillance equipment, security equipment at the border. Okay? We need more agents as well. Okay? So we need to do stuff. We need places for these people to stay that are safe until they are able to go through the process of figuring out whether they're going to be able to be asylumed in this country and be safe, or not asylum to this country and need to go back home. Okay? We also need to give these people the ability to work. So that, okay, we don't want our tax dollars supporting these immigrants, illegal immigrants, then let them be able to work on work permits so they can support themselves. Don't we have about 10 million jobs right now that can't be filled because we don't have enough people that are able to work to fill the jobs anyway? So would it make sense to let some of these people go ahead and get a permit to work, pay taxes, pay Medicare taxes that we need to fill that coffer, right? Pay that Social Security tax because we need to fill that coffer, don't we? And be able to support themselves in our country. But that costs money to be able to do, to be able to have a system put in place that we are able to help them find the jobs, create the permits until they're able to figure out their status with the legal system and all that stuff. So we need money for that as well. But don't we have this like huge debt? Well, yes, we do. And it is an issue. Okay. But we have had success recently. $76 billion just came into the Treasury. That was unexpected. Unexpected because why? Well, because people paid taxes. They owed money and they paid it in states that had gone through natural disasters. So they were given more time to be able to pay their taxes. So California, Alabama, other places that have had recent natural disasters, they were given more time to pay their taxes and they've been collecting them. Okay. So we had $76 billion of unexpected revenue coming in. So that's less $76 billion less that we have to go borrow. Now we still got to go borrow $776 billion, which is the most we've ever had to borrow in the fourth quarter. So that's, but it's amazing what happens when you actually are able to go and collect money as well. And if we can focus a little bit more on that, then, we can start making dents in things. And then we can start having conversations on how those governmental investments need to be done. What needs to be done? And it's a bigger fundamental conversation that probably we're going to get into on our next show. What is government supposed to do? What do we need it to do? What do we want it to do? So that's a conversation that we should be having. Not that it's all bad and evil and yicky, because it's Halloween, it's icky and scary and all that. Because government itself is not that. Especially in our country. Because government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's what it's supposed to be. If it's not, then whose fault is that? Right? Because we allowed it to happen. We're the government too. Because we put people in place that would not do the things that we need them to do. So that's a conversation we need to have, and we'll probably talk about that in our next show. But for today, let's focus on getting these things done. Talk to your representatives and tell them we got to do this for ourselves to protect us. Protect our economy, protect our security. Once again, thank you for the time this week, folks. I'm Brent Veasey, living your best life with Senior Choices. That's what we're about. Thank you very much. Take care and have a great week. Goodbye.